how do you earn respect, especially since what we've learned, or at least I learned, I want to be mindful of that, is that it's historically been about recognition and not necessarily respect. Recognition explodes and subsides while respect reverberates and multiplies. But how do you earn respect?
Well, I think there's some values that we need to apply. And to earn respect, we have to give respect, correct? And we have to understand, what does that look like? How, like you're asking, and that's what our school teaches, is the how. It's not just lecture based and here's the history of it. Really is how you do it is accountability. The communication style is how they like to be heard, and how you like, understanding that style and how you deliver it. Some people are fast paced. If it's consistent, non accountability, they don't want to work with you.
You are listening to Personalization Outbreak, a podcast about the collapse of traditional corporate standards in today's more personalized world. I'm Glenn Yopes. I'm a leadership strategist, author, contributor to Forbes, and founder of the Leadership in the Age of Personalization movement. On this show, I'm interviewing executives across multiple sectors to find out how the balance between standardization and personalization can exist.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another show of Personalization Outbreak. Thriving in a global economy requires this ability to navigate diverse cultural norms, understanding international protocols, respecting business etiquette, and distinct communication styles. I bet you don't always think about those things, but it's all about the details. See, beyond mastering relationships, mastering these types of skills not only creates new opportunities, but they also help you avoid misunderstandings that can arise from differences. Now, I don't know about you, but it seems as in our efforts to bring people closer together, we're pulling them further apart. Why? Because it's about these little details of difference that matter to other people that you may not place enough value in. Well, to help us understand all this and the critical nature of these skills is our guest, Pamela Eyring. Now, Pamela is the president and owner of the Protocol School of Washington, an accredited school that focuses on international protocol, business etiquette, and communication skills training. Now, with more than 4 decades of public and private sector experience in operational protocol and educational development, Pamela, as you will hear yourself, has extensive knowledge of U.S. and international practices and is a global thought leader in the etiquette and protocol industry. Now, I bet you didn't even know that there was such an industry. But what does this tell you? Just how much we don't know when we don't pay attention to the details. And we live in a world now where paying attention to what matters to people and understanding what makes them different and distinct and how you engage with those types of people have more value than ever before. Why? Because we're losing trust. But don't listen to me. We're going to get Pamela on here shortly. In fact, before we get started, please click the like button below, share it with your colleagues, and subscribe to our YouTube channel and social media at Glenn Yopes. Pamela Eyring, welcome to the show. I love the call that we had just a week ago in preparation for today. Thanks so much.
Glenn, I'm so delighted to be here. Wonderful, wonderful podcast you have.
Well, thank you very much, Pamela. Well, it's people like you that elevate the quality of it. And I continue to learn as I've done this now for 5 seasons that knowing something's right isn't enough to start doing what's right, and knowing something's wrong isn't enough to stop doing it. And if there's one thing that we know is right, but we don't do enough of, is being mindful of people's differences, how to handle those differences, and knowing that there's actually resources out there like you and your institution that can help people understand that in the end, what makes the society and the world that we live in today so different is that we have to actually pay attention to differences and know how to navigate them. So before we go into the details of your institution and your leadership, I'd like people to get to know you a little bit. So what is your mission as
Mm.
an individual? Like what is it that matters to you? And how did your mission actually guide your journey that has now taken you to be the owner of the Protocol School of Washington since 2005. I mean, there's something deep
What?
there about you because for you to care so much about these types of skills that one would view as a niche, but is a massive opportunity, it's time for you to get discovered to a whole other level. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh my gosh, it's so nice of you to ask, Glenn. But I have to say, the passion that I have for protocol and etiquette really started, you know, out of high school, going to night school, and my first job with the United States Air Force as a civilian employee. I was 18. I was a baby, and good thing is that my mother and my father, my father was in the military, so I learned, some of the etiquette of people skills through my parents. Logically, a lot of us have. And so when I started work, I wanted to be somebody. I wanted to be a professional woman. I wanted to be seen and heard and respected. And I knew I had to do that for other people in order to receive that. You earn respect. You don't buy it. You don't just deserve it. And so, I've watched a lot of people in the military, and especially leaders, male, female, in different levels of how they earned respect and how they treated other people. And I would model that. It was maybe informal mentoring, but I would model what they were doing because I thought that's how I would get ahead. And also, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed dressing up and looking professional and learning more about myself so that I could develop my career. And I was very career oriented, but I knew the relationships would help me. And so fast forward, I moved into protocol and worked for several high level general officers and SESs, which are like civilian employees at a high level. And again, I was privy to watching relationships unfold, diplomacy, discussions, and being, having that opportunity again really expanded my knowledge. And then I continued to practice. And when I became the chief of protocol at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, I had heard from a friend of mine that she had just went to the Protocol School of Washington. And I was like, what is that? The Betty Ford Clinic for really rude people? We were joking. And she laughed. She goes, no, Pamela, it's training for us. And I said, well, I have to go. And so I asked my commander. He let me attend. And I met Dorothea Johnson, our founder, and thought, I didn't know what I didn't know, Glenn, and learned. And then it went back and taught it was actually our Train the Trainer program on international protocol and etiquette. And so I went back into my office. I had 15 people that were working with me at that time, and I taught them so that they could have that power as well. So really the transition, and was seeing that soft power really come to being empowering. And then I just kept in touch with Dorothea and moved into education and training for executive development. And she told me one day she was going to sell the school. And I thought, would you consider me? And asked her, and there was a pause. And I thought, maybe I should have asked that question. However, she said, well, let's talk about it. And, I really was at a pinnacle of my career early in the Air Force. And not just that, but I was so inspired by the school of learning and the cross-cultural awareness that I needed, because we were hosting a lot of delegates and heads of state that would come to our base. And we needed to manage those relationships for allies, right? Mm-hmm. It was a great moment after coming from the school that how I could apply those skills immediately when we were hosting visitors to help our commander and our country build these relationships. But those nuances with internationals, the nuances with community leaders and their communication style, really that emotional intelligence was key to learning all of those things.
So well, first of all, in fact, I'm going to pivot here a minute. You mentioned something that I didn't connect and uh, as I was preparing for this. And I think it's a very important point that all of this at the end of the day is a critical ingredient to earning respect. I mean, we're a world so divided unnecessarily. Personally, I think that we just don't know anybody anymore. And so we make assumptions about who people are. And that's why it's so easy to judge. But how do you earn respect, especially since what we've learned, or at least I learned, I want to be mindful of that, is that it's historically been about recognition and not necessarily respect. And I think that there's a deep distinction. And I've always said that, respect, recognition explodes and subsides while respect reverberates and multiplies. But how do you earn respect?
Well, I think it comes, there's some values that we need to apply. And to earn respect, we have to give respect, correct? And we have to understand, what does that look like? How, like you're asking, and that's what our school teaches, is the how. It's not just lecture based and, here's the history of it. Really is how you do it is accountability. So if you have a client or a peer or a supervisor, in the business world, you want to tell them, you don't want to fluff up anything. That's the way I look at it. Is the communication style is how they like to be heard, and how you like, understanding that style and how you deliver it. Some people are fast paced. I worked with a lot of generals, they don't have time, you got to get to the point really quickly. But accountability, when you say, Glenn, I'm going to meet you at 11 o'clock and we're going to have 1 hour and we're going to discuss this and we're going to discuss that. That's your commitment. That's your word to me. And if you don't show up, 15 minutes late or well, Pam, I'm changing everything, and not tell me, that surprises, or there's been a big change and you haven't let me know, then I feel not as respected. And it's like, well, why didn't you tell me, Glenn? Why didn't you guide me? Why didn't you help me understand what this meeting was about? You see. So, or that you tell a client, we'll deliver this proposal to you on this day before this time frame. Do it. Don't make excuses. That's what I hear a lot of. It's like, well, I didn't feel well, or, oh, I had a bad day, or, but if it's consistent, you lose that trust. Now, if it's one, they already have a relationship with you and it's one time, people are forgiving, which is good. But if it's consistent, non-accountability, they don't want to work with you.
Yeah, I think that's the point. It's the consistent action. And and just even taking the initiative when you become inactive. In other words, well, let me give you an example. I was driving to a meeting the other day. It just listening to you, this popped up, and I'm new to this to the Raleigh Durham area, and so I got lost, and so had a choice. Yeah, the GPS, the whole thing, traffic. I can give you a whole mother, but I got lost. And so I had a choice. I was going to either show up 5 minutes early, or I would make the phone call to the individual that I was going to meet for the very first time and call him 10 minutes early to tell him that I was going to be 5 minutes late.
And what did
I do?
Yeah, I want to know.
I want to call him. I called him and he said, Glenn, no problem. We'll see you. Thanks so much for calling.
Exactly.
And when I was there, when I arrived, I said, Joe, I'm really sorry that I was late. I mean, it doesn't give a good impression, but at least I hope you respected that I called you early to let you know I was late. So if you want to take extra time getting ready, get another cup of coffee, I wasn't wasting your time. He goes, Glenn, I really appreciate you acknowledging that. I just made the assumption that, you're probably, playing with your phone and you made a wrong turn. But now that you've told me that you're new to the area, I shouldn't have made that assumption. And the fact that you've given me this explanation, that really means a lot to me. Thank you. Why do I share this? Because oftentimes, again, it's easy to make assumptions. It's easy to place judgment. It's easy for someone to derive their own conclusions. So, yes, consistency matters. But I just thought I'd start there with you because you've seen your institution evolve over the past 19 years to serve the values and realities of today's students and leaders and organizations.
Yeah.
I mean, how has the institution had to evolve, and what have you done to keep it fresh?
Yeah, it's 19 years. The school's been around for 35. So, we logically, when I acquired the school, I added my own thoughts into, how we can develop these people, how do we help them? And I also believe that we really have to understand that these are adults. We don't treat them like children. They're adults. A lot of people think protocol is so formal, but it's not to be used that way. It's just to guide us. So what we did was, when I bought the school and acquired it, we plussed it up. That's what our founder wanted us to do. We did small things. We changed up how we were doing some of the instructional design of the classes just to refresh them, got them out of their seats more often to move and do activities, really putting in that leadership element baseline in everything we were teaching. And, because they come with experience, right, Glenn? You're an adult, you have your own education, experiences, values. And so adults want to learn, but we also want to have, be treated respectfully, again, going back to that way. But I think what changed for us is we developed a protocol officer training, which really is not just for government and military. These are for people that are having these visitors. They don't know they're doing protocol and they don't know how to do it correctly, where that guest feels special, that is welcomed, and that they're respected. So how do we do that operationally? And I think that really, because there was a gap, in the world, I thought, and so we created this program. And now today, as we go through, things do change. The etiquette has changed sometimes. We're doing more virtual, right? And so with that, we had to add in, the virtual communication pieces. Well, how can you represent your company or your organization well when you're in meetings virtually? And you remember all that pandemic occurred. It's like people, taking their laptops to the restroom with their camera on. They didn't know what they were doing. We all didn't, the most of us, but we figured it out. And so we have to adjust with the times. It's like business cards today, there's the paper based, which I still carry as a backup, but I also have the digital, because people wanting to do that instant contact with, giving to those individuals, but sometimes it doesn't work. Or you're dealing with more mature people who maybe don't embrace it. Not all people embrace the digital business cards, but they should know how and be prepared for it.
Excuse me, Pamela, you've jolted another thought, and I'd love for you to give me an example after I share this story with you of what are some of the things that people have learned from this new protocol curriculum. Now, about 10 years ago, actually about 15 years ago, actually it was 15, I had the good fortune to be sponsored to launch my first book, Earning Serendipity, in Seoul, Korea. So I went to South Korea.
Oh, wow.
And had a chance to meet with not just some government officials, but also some senior executives out there. And I remember that one of the leaders came up to me and said, Mr. Yopis, it's a pleasure to meet you. And he, the way they give the card.
Yeah.
And he said, we have a lot in common. You see, I see that your parents are from Cuba, and I want you to know that there's a lot of cultural similarities between Cubans and South Koreans. And we began to instantly have this discussion. And I could remember in that moment, when my dad told me as a young boy, your cultural background will play a critical role in your career. So the more you know about it and respect it, you'll see it'll have benefit. And so I've always done everything I can to not just understand the history, but to understand the traditions and the legacy. But I share this with you because I did not get a formal training, and I probably could have used you. And this is why I'm asking you to share some tips. But I had enough common sense because of how I was raised to
Sure.
show up in that moment. And it was literally less than 5 minutes. I knew that the rest of the day was going to be either great or not great. Fortunately, it was great.
And
And one of the,
how
so
did it
anyway,
make you
I thought I'd
feel?
share that with you.
Oh
Pardon
my
me?
gosh, this is an excellent story. I mean, think about this. One, the protocol, he researched you. Then he researched, you know, Americans have all kinds of backgrounds, since we are delightful that way. you know. But he researched you in protocol. That's one thing we teach is do your homework. You know, you can research that person. And he evidently, and I know that this is true, that in your biographical information, it does say that. And so then he was like curious about your background, which a lot of South Koreans are. A lot of Asian countries love to research culture. And in fact, I think they're better at it than we are. And so he did that. And then that commonality, that's what we want to look for with someone, whether they're from another country or they're, 3 states over. But how did that make you feel when he said that there's a lot of commonalities between your culture?
Oh, I felt
Did you
so
smile?
aw-
Did you just go like, oh my gosh, you're recognizing my culture?
I felt such a sense of honor.
Yeah.
And I also felt so grateful to have parents that prepared me at some level for that moment. I would have never thought that that was going to happen. But this is the point, right? And you said it, boy, South Koreans, Asian populations, they'll do that. They'll do that extra research. Unlike here, well, we'll just Google you or check you out on social media and see if you're relevant or not. I mean, and these are those differences that I think that you're talking about. But
Yes.
keep going,
Well,
Pamela. What
and
other
also,
things do they learn from your protocol program?
and that's what we're trying to teach. It's just not the do's and taboos, which are, we need to know those. But because he looked into your culture, that's not, that gave him a sense of understanding of some of those do's and taboos that to understand and what is politically correct and not correct. And, how are women treated, whatever it is, they research. But that's what we're looking for in commonality. The other thing is how do you host someone? We talk about it at our home. Okay, so-and-so's coming and they're going to join us for dinner. So we try, to present our house in a way that is beautiful. We clean it. We make sure there's toilet paper. I mean, think about this. We do this. But in business, it's more than that. It's who's going to be at the door to welcome them. That's one area we teach. Don't just wait for them to walk in the building, get lost, get to the right door, open it up, and then have the receptionist there instead. Why don't we wait for them? If I think they're so important, I'm going to go down to and, wait for them at the door. And then I'm going to walk them in. So, because maybe it's their first time. And then how do we walk them? If we're their host or if we're just a greeter, how do we escort them to that area? And this doesn't have to be for only high officials with titles and grade and rank. This could just be a client that we're meeting that we want, or a potential client. So how we treat that person is going to make a difference. Do we have their placard? If they have a meeting and we're giving them a briefing or orientation, what does that table tent look like? Does it say John? Or does it say, first and last name? So that he could be or she could be aware, they could be aware at the table who the other people are at the table. And then the rank and seating, if they're the guest of honor, our potential client, you want to have them seated to your right, not just any random place. Protocol has no randomness. Everything's intentional and purposeful, and authentic, so we're respecting that person as a potential client. We might have refreshments for them. For instance, I'm always telling hotels and our clients, when you're dealing with internationals, you're inviting these internationals to your office or to an event, and you're in a hotel, for instance, or in your conference room, do not put out tap water. They don't drink tap water. They don't like tap water. They don't trust tap water. They might not even drink it in their own country, much less in ours. So have a nice glass, have a bottle of water, so that they can have something to drink. And then if you want to put like little nuts or mints, depending on how long it's going to be. But, have that table set in a way that's inviting and attractive. These are actions that are so easy and cheap to do. And people see it. We're visual people. So we respect that. We're like, wow, they're really putting on the show for me today. They're treating me respectfully.
Okay, Pamela, I've got some more here for you.
Okay, let's go.
and I think this is good because these are tangible things, right? Yeah. And so what have you just pulled out of me? I was raised to honor our guest from the moment they walked into the door. And again, I grew up, lower middle class in Azusa, California. And but this has nothing to do with money. It has to do with dignity and honor.
Right.
And what happened? I think that's important, right? Because you don't have to have a fancy home or fancy things for people to respect you. And I learned that a long time ago. And it's so interesting how the world is like, we believe that you have to have those things when it's actually the opposite. But anyway, and that's why I think what you do is so valuable. But I remember my parents said, when people leave the home, you walk outside, you wait until they get in their car, and you wave to them as the car goes down the street. I share this because for those that are watching and listening, think about how many times you've been to somebody's house, you say goodbye, they close the door, and it's over.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about the details.
Mm-hmm.
I remember this story. Long story, very, very short. I went to go visit a potential business partner in Mexico. And I met one of the sons that was running the operation at a grocery store, because this was a food business that we had got into. And I went to their farm, their big harvest, their in operation. And the father was there waiting for me. And the first thing that he said was, "Is your father Frank Yopis?" I said, "He is." "How did you know that?" He said, "Son, come with me." And he puts me in the tractor. We go to his home, because in Mexico, if you have a farm, you live on the farm. And he takes me back to his home, and he shows my dad's record albums on his wall. And he says, "Your dad had an indelible impact on my childhood." Like, my father started a quartet in Cuba back in the late 50s, early 60s. But my whole point is that you just never know what you do today prepares other generations of, whether it's friends or family, that you never know the interconnections those things have. But that all begins with the work that you do that is highly foundational, because those learnings actually carry throughout your life and they multiply. And it actually helps you, as I would call, earn serendipity, because someone one day is going to meet somebody that you know. And if they see that same way of being in them as you remember from when they met you, they see the connection and they say, "I can further respect and trust you." So I'm just trying to help people recognize not just the multiplier effect, but how this has such lasting effects that we don't know until later on in our lives, which is really what you've done for me today, Pamela. But anyway,
it's all coming back to you, but you always had it. It's just, and you're lucky that your parents shared those core values with you, because there's a lot of families, unfortunately, they're too busy, working adults, or a single parent, trying their best, got to get them to interculture or all the different events that they have to go to or sporting, and they don't have a lot of time with their children. And they don't hear those messages sometimes, especially sometimes they're parent deaf, as they call it, where they don't, you're just my mom saying that, or you're just my dad saying that. But you were fortunate, like myself, to have parents that had the time and spent and made sure they brought it up, make a point of how you should respect other people. And, again, that serendipitous side, I always say, you never know who you're going to work for or work with one day. So you need, when we talk about authentic selves, like you do so well, having those, your code of conduct and being consistent with it and say, even because people get nasty. I mean, you travel, the airlines and the, flight attendants can be either really great or horrifying, and same can the passengers that you have to sit with. And it's how we react to these kind of things too. And sometimes it's just impossible, but that code of conduct that you have, that your parents started for you, and then you saw how it worked, and it doesn't cost anything. Please and thank you are always wonderful. Embrace them. If someone opens the door for you, whether you're a woman or not, say thank you. Recognize that good service, recognize that good attitude, and avoid as much as you can the negativity, because it's out there. It's thick, very thick.
So on that note, Pamela, what do students uniquely learn about themselves as they experience the Protocol School of Washington? What do they learn about themselves?
I think they learn confidence. They learn teamwork. They if you think about teamwork, that if I apply what I've just learned, then I'm going to build this intelligence, and they feel more confident in making decisions when they're put in a spot, or they're having to think out, okay, if we change this, what is that going to affect? If I don't do this, what is the reaction to it? What if I just, nonchalantly just say, oh yeah, so-and-so is coming, but I don't do any research on that person? So now they have these techniques that are universal. I mean, whether you're in any country, these techniques work. And then you can add the culture onto it. So we give them tools. We give them tools to do that. And that's why we have our newsletter, once a month, pointing out some of these great things that you can do, because it really can change your life. It changed mine. It changed.
Well, give us a couple of tools. I think now people are listening and super eager, like, okay, Pamela, show me some things that you've got here, because I'm getting intrigued about going to the Protocol School of Washington. So give us a few here.
Well, for instance, we're, again, visual people. So if I'm attending any events, or you're attending any event, you need to think about, where is this event? What is the level of formality? Understand who are these people we're meeting with, and what's the mission? What's the impact you can make? And so it starts with attire. How do I show up? They talk a lot about that, showing up. Well, how do you show up? That you still can show your personality and be authentic to yourself, but at the same time, maybe assimilate a little bit. So that's what I would recommend. That also, eye contact. I know that you're so basic, but a lot of people don't give good eye contact today. They look around, they're like distracted, especially with their phones. We all have them, but they get very distracted. They're thinking 10 things at once when they're not engaging. So eye contact and greetings really make a difference in those listening skills. That's a real key, just to show up dressed appropriately, that it doesn't, you can still show your personality, but it may not be so distracting if it's a more formal environment, or if it's more casual. How do you show up there? Being dressed a little bit better never hurt anybody. Now, I don't never hurt anybody. Err to the side of formality when you first are going, because you don't know until you get there. But you can ask questions. Have you been to this event before? So starting with dress and our body language, our eye contact, and that's what they love to learn. And then business entertaining, sometimes we're a guest and we're sitting at a table and it's crowded at this table and, it's not just the forks and knives, but you need to know how to manage your place setting. What is yours, not steal someone's role, but also be able to make conversation and understanding the power of small talk and conversation skills.
Oh my goodness, you're bringing up so many different things.
These are baseline.
Well, let me throw this out. There's two big things I'd like to address. Again, you are literally designing the discussion now, which I love, because in other words, you're already practicing what you teach. Yeah. So here's one thing that I see in people. The big question is, what is it that shuts people off? Like, doesn't give people a good impression, right? But let me give you one thing that for me,
okay,
I'm going to answer that for myself. When do I shut off, and where do I feel disconnection? Like I don't find interest in the individual, and I don't care what role, title, any of that stuff. Because for me, it's not about what people have, it's about who they are. I'm shocked at the number of people that don't ask questions. They just love to talk about themselves and talk more about themselves. And I just learned how to be a really, really, really good listener, knowing that I'm going to respect this person and more than likely never speak to them again. And I don't mean that in a mean way. It's complete turnoff. They don't engage. So number one, what are things that create these disconnections? But how do you help someone build the confidence to ask questions? Because people seem to feel, and I see this in my own work, where you have to have the answer when what's really more interesting is the questions that you ask. And this is something that I've learned from many, many leaders. Glenn, our conversations last a little bit longer than I've ever planned because you always ask me questions that make me think. So anyway, take what you get out of that and give us a lesson here.
Well, communication's two ways, right? Glenn, it's not me just talking at you. It's that engagement. You said the right word. So letting someone speak and then, being self-aware. I think this is the hardest part, is because we do love to talk about ourselves. We have so many wonderful life experiences. And you ever hear somebody that'll talk about something, go, oh yeah, and my mom did this, or oh, and yeah, we had this. So they keep wanting to add on that, oh, I got that too. I think we have to be self-aware and be, listening like you do. And then if we're feeling uncomfortable, like we're being talked at, maybe change that question. Maybe because that must have been a key question for them. You can change it. Understanding what to talk about, like you said, how do you open small talk? What does that look like? And how long do you talk to someone or with someone? That is too, especially when you're meeting other people, like at a reception or a social, you don't want to stay with the same people for 30 minutes. It's like 10 minutes or 15 even is a long time to get to know someone, especially if there is a connection. But that's what we're trying to do. And so what don't we talk about right now? Of course, politics. We don't want to bring up any sensitive subjects, diets. Some people maybe can't lose weight, or they've gained weight, or medical. That can get a lot of elderly people tend to like to talk about their biopsies, their skin cancer, they start at the ankles, work their way up. And they don't know. That's all they know right now. That's really bothering them. You can listen for a while, but then you need to change the subject, maybe even change the person if you can. But the good topics, weather's always been one, but I don't like going on and on about the weather. Just a little taste, or just to get some conversations started. But hobbies or vacations or trips. So, oh my gosh, I just went on this cruise. I've never cruised before. Are you a cruiser? And then they can say, oh yes, which one did you go on? And then you start having some dialogue, some engagement. And these are not profound conversation skills. You don't need that when you're first meeting someone, but allowing them to have the conversation and being self-aware that, oh gosh, have I been talking for 15 minutes straight? Let me let Glenn say a few things. You know?
You're so relatable and easy to speak with, Pamela. So before we wrap this up, give us a sense, right? I'm trying to think of things that our audience would want to know more about, given where we're at. What kind of name some of the classes that you guys teach to give people a sense of the curriculum?
In fact, we're starting in October our new individual courses on, one is how to succeed in the international arena. It's a trademark seminar that we teach in person, or they can come virtual live where we have an instructor actually teaching this and, through Zoom, our educational Zoom program. So how to succeed in the international arena? How do you manage those cultural differences and similarities? How do you use it to your knowledge and benefit as a professional? And then we have Polish Your Professional Presence, which is more about understanding business attire and guidelines, what's appropriate, what might not be appropriate. More importantly, how to power up your look when you need to, and what does that look like? And then we have all the business etiquette ones, which I enjoy so much, is business etiquette. We call it Outclass the Competition Business Etiquette. And really what it is those critical skills we were just talking about, the eye contact, the greetings, how do you get in a group of people? Some of us are introverts. We don't know how to really engage with people today, or how do you get out of that group of people when you're finished talking? The business cards, name badges. And then we go into dining. A dine like a diplomat's another one of our trademarked in-person or virtual classes, because people need to know how to do business entertaining. They need to understand the different cultural, American style, European style, Asian style. There's also, Middle Eastern, some, eat with their hand and not, there are different silverware, but it's, cultural in that business entertaining side. So those are just a few that we have. Then we have our certificate programs. Those are our 5-day or 10, 12-week virtual classes on protocol officer training. If you're planning these events and visitors and meetings, then that would be an excellent program. And then the train to be an intercultural etiquette and protocol consultant is a really good program as well, because that teaches you our seminars, but then you can teach internally with your organization or in your community. So those are the best.
I love it. So let me go the other way now as we close. What do you say to those who say, or come back to you and say, hey, Pamela, look, if anything, I see us becoming less about etiquette. I mean, look at the world we live in. I mean, when we read the news online,
Yes.
half the things I read have typos on them. I mean, like we're not, all about the details anymore. We're just trying to get through day by day. What do you say to the skeptics?
Well, I just tell them it's a differentiator. Like, you can go with the crowd and be casual and, have typos and, no punctuality or really, I can wear my jeans to work anytime I want to kind of attitude. That's fine. Or you can take the high road and really differentiate yourself from the pack. That was the thing I learned a long time ago in my career, is that I wanted to distinguish myself as a professional, and I wanted a career, and I wanted to grow in that career, and I wanted to teach other people those polished ways of career enhancement. And that's what I would tell them is, you write a thank you note. I know it's unheard of, a thank you note, handwritten. Can I just send an email? And oh my gosh, think about it, Glenn, how it makes you feel when you open that up going, oh my gosh, they took that time. This time is precious. So I would just say, take the high road and differentiate yourself from that pack of casualness.
Yeah. And if I were to summarize what you said, if living a brand that's authentic to you, that will give you distinction, then this should matter to you.
Love that. Yes, I like it.
Well, Pamela, look, thank you so much for being on the show. Let's stay in touch. I really am so intrigued by what you do. I think it's extraordinarily important. And I'm sure that it teaches all these different skills can be taught to different people at different levels. you understand the importance of personalization. And I think that's what I'm taking away from this is, look, we all are different and we need to be prepared for other people's differences by really understanding more of who we are and what we represent so that we're in that moment, we actually know what to do with all these differences. And I think that's the issue here is that we don't always know what to do with these differences. And it's about how you navigate through them and get the best out of them is what really sets those people apart and really prepares them for success and significance in their future. So that's what I took away from this. And I just want to say thanks again, Pamela. And as we wrap up every show, when you lead in the age of personalization, you will see things that others don't, do what others won't, and keep pushing when prudence has quit. Pamela, what a pleasure it's been. Thank you so much for your time today.
I had fun. I enjoyed you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to Personalization Outbreak. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. If you enjoyed the content, visit ageofpersonalization.com to check out our free streaming video series and learn how to get involved in the movement. I'm Glenn Yopes. I wish you a good day, and remember, without strategy, change is merely substitution, not evolution.